Well, happy Sunday and welcome to another time with the Father. I don't think I've ever told you how I came by the name of this particular YouTube, Time with the Father, but months ago, when I was feeling prompted by the Lord to do this, I just very quickly in prayer said, well, okay, what do you want to call it? And even before I finished saying that, I heard in my spirit, Time with the Father. And I thought, that's really good. I don't think I could have thought of that. So thank you for joining me. And I'm Dr. Michelle Morgan. We're going to jump right in. I have one word for you today, desperate. And then I'm going to put it in a question. Are you desperate? Well, I know that that word can take on a different meaning depending on what part of us it's coming from. So let me share some things with you as I've written them down, as I've gotten them from the Lord in spending time with Him. It does take on many faces, doesn't it? That word desperation. We'll use it that way, depending on what we're desperate for. So I'm thinking in my physical, like if I'm hungry and I'm desperate for ice cream, hey, I'm going to find a way to go find ice cream if it's not in my freezer. But what if we're desperate in our soul? What if our soul longs desperately for something or someone, even if it's wrong? Don't we find a way to make it happen? And oftentimes our body will even drive us to that point to make it happen. But what if we're desperate in our spirit, that part of who we are? Because if you're a believer, your spirit is one with the Spirit of God. And we can be desperate in our spirit for all the right things. How do we get desperate? And how do we stay desperate to stay away from those things that so easily snare us? Isn't that a great question? Those cravings in our body and our soul. Well, in our desperation, we look for satisfaction, don't we? But in our pursuit, we realize that what we've filled our longings with is either temporary at the least, or at the worst, it's harmful. That's a realization we need to come to so that we can get desperate for the right things. How do we spin out of this endless cycle of bad desperation? Well, friend, we have to change our focus, right? It's like putting on a pair of glasses where we can see clearly what's really going on in our lives. It's proven that people don't change until they get desperate. And that level of desperation is different for everyone. I'll be the first to admit that. My desperation came in stages. The first stage, I became frustrated with the way that I was doing things, that it wasn't working out right. And then I became disappointed that the changes weren't taking place. I was doing all the right things I thought, the way I thought they should be done, but I was becoming very disappointed and then almost hopeless. Those three stages in my desperation helped to change me, to not only change my focus, but to change directions. Well, I thought in the end that as I was becoming hopeless, there must be something wrong with me. Now, not that any of that wasn't true, it probably was true in that moment, but I realized I've got to change directions. Something is not right, and I'm doing some things wrong. I don't know about you, but I walk that path that's well taken, that well plotted path. I walked it with others along the way, laughing and joking and just having fun, and then wondering where others were when they disappeared. I turned back a few times, but almost always got pulled back on that path by someone else that laughed and joked along with me. Well, this happened over and over again until I walked to a place where I saw a cross. This scripture in 1 Corinthians 1:18, it says, "For the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God." And I was foolish on the wrong path until I realized I was desperate for the wrong things. Jesus was crucified between two thieves. And I remember reading that one time and asking myself, maybe it was the Lord asking me, which thief are you, Michelle? Are you the thief on the side of Jesus that was haughty and prideful and wasn't going to go anywhere except to hell? Are you the thief on the other side who realized his sin and said, Jesus, I want to be with you today in paradise? Well, at that point, I became desperate to follow Jesus. And if others wanted to come, well, they could or they could not. I decided I was desperate for one thing and one person, and that was the cross, and that was Jesus. Now, the path got narrow, as we know, but even on that narrow path of God's way, I became weary. And I wanted others to help me carry the cross as I followed Jesus. Well, others obliged, and the burden became lighter. Little by little, though, what I didn't realize is that I was compromising. Compromise entered my life, not even realizing what was happening. I grew thirsty. Have you ever prepared for a run? I have. I've prepared for a run from 1 mile to a marathon. And if you don't tank up on water before, while you're training, and during the run, and even after, well, you know, my friend, you become desperate for water. Well, not, okay, here's what I want you to hear. If you don't hear anything else this whole time, not doing what you know to do will drive you to do what you know to do. That's that desperation. I got back on the path and I picked up my own cross. My newfound desperation was to place my focus on Jesus, his obedience to die on the cross, his love shown through his sacrifice on the cross, my sins forgiven because of what he did for me and for you on the cross, his blood spilled at the foot of the cross, on the backside of the cross. He took those stripes for my healing, and on his body for the cross. Well, this makes me desperate to know Jesus more every day. Every day. In our daily devotion called The Glue, we also do the podcast. It's called 3 Minutes in the Word. The links will be in the description below. You can read more about the cross. There's 3 different dates within that devotion you can read. I'm going to give you those dates. It's January the 18th, March the 12th, and June 13th. We talk more about our thoughts of the cross. I'd love for you to share some of your insights, your comments. Let me know your thoughts about desperation. My prayer for you, friend, my prayer for you is that you become desperate for the one who is desperate for you. And until next time, remember, the heart of the matter is a matter of the heart.